Since we last spoke, the battle for relegation has sort of slimmed and trimmed down a little bit. Although I would say that teams aren't still out of it. You know, you look at the likes of West Ham, and because they've picked up a bit of form, we've gone, oh, well, they're sort of out of it, you know. And actually, it's like, no, because if you've got a hard running, if you, for example, have got a Man City, you can pretty much write off the points. And then, for example, you play a team in and around you that are hitting a bit of form, that are looking good, Bournemouth or someone like that. Yeah. Again, if you then lose that match, you're straight back in it. Yeah. So I do think it's still a very interesting relegation battle, but the candidates now have become a lot more clear. It's gone from a point where there was like 7 teams in it for relegation. Yeah. And now, despite the fact we are recording during the Saturday games, the battle for relegation has slimmed down to, I would say, 4 teams, because I say Southampton are down, maybe 5. What club suffers the most from being relegated this season?
It depends how far we're going to go up, because like you said, rightly so, I think when we spoke about this on another show, we spoke about this, and you know, we said like from 20th, even though we all kind of agreed that Southampton were gone, we kind of said from like 20th to even like 13th or 12th. Yeah.
Seen the scores?
Yeah, I seen the scores. I didn't want to tell you. I was going to try and like hype you up. And
Chelsea have won 3-1.
They have, so you're up to 11th.
We're having it off, mate.
So yeah, it depends how far we're going up. For me, it's from Everton, Forest, Leicester, Leeds and West Ham. Bournemouth from 39, so they're closest to Wolves and Palace and that top end.
West Ham definitely still in it, because if you look at their running, games.
So we're going to go off the prediction I made like about a month ago. I said that Southampton, Everton and Leicester would go down. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to base it off of that. I'll throw in something else later. But I think for me, Everton would be the team that I think would struggle and it would hit them harder. Of course. And I like Everton. I mean, I much prefer Everton to Liverpool, and obviously I've got a good couple of mates who are Everton fans. But
it'd be the first team to go down off the top of my head that could go down and potentially, within their first season of Championship football, be playing in a new stadium. I know obviously City moved out of Main Road when they were in the Championship, I think. But yeah, like it's a bit of a random one. Like you got a half-built stadium. Yeah. You know, you got FFP looming. Yeah. Well, not even looming. You've got FFP. Like you've got financial fair play in, and that is a whole thing of like the fire sale of obviously, you know, the Tottenham goat Richarlison and all these players that had to leave. He's been ponying on, Richarlison.
He's been shit.
So for Everton,
for me, it's Everton, because as I say, what tends to happen, and we've seen it throughout football, is, you know, teams get relegated in order to cover I know they get parachute payments, but they only last for so long. Yep. But in general, they have to kind of like jettison their better players so they can recoup a bit of money. So if you find that Everton do that, not only have they got to get rid of their so-called better players, they've got to then somehow try and recruit ones that are going to survive for the Championship.
When their recruitment has been looked upon as poorly in the past.
It's been so poor. And then obviously you've got the whole new stadium thing. That's cost going into it. I mean, I'll quickly cut back to Arsenal, like in a different situation when we moved from Highbury to the Emirates. That crippled us in terms of being able to compete for signing players massively.
Half a decade.
Yeah. And even though we were sort of qualifying,
it's only really once you I think you started spending around the Ozil, Sanchez time.
Yeah. And that was only down, you know, I know people won't agree, and I'm not really a big fan of, like, you know, fourth is a trophy. It's not a trophy, but Wenger kept us in that.
He is if you're a Spurs fan.
Oh, well, they need all the trophies they can get, mate. I think coronation of King Charles, I think he's had more trophies now today than Spurs have got. But I think Wenger keeping us in that top 4 for so long helped us out. Yeah. So that aside, but no, we're going to talk about Everton now. They go down to the Championship. If they go down to the Championship, they get rid of their better players. They've got the stadium to still finish yet. So they've got all of these overheads, all of that cost. And I think just the way that they're playing at the moment as well, that doesn't bode well for when you drop into the Championship, because it is a tough league. You know, someone like Forest goes down, they're used to it. They've been there for like 25 years. Do you know what I mean? Leeds, again, there's another team that I don't think would necessarily struggle. I think that they would just adapt to it because they've been there for so long before. Southampton, again, they've, you know, in the last sort of 10 years, they've been relegated, I believe, or maybe even 15 years they've been relegated. So again, they could, again, bounce. I just think Everton have been one of those teams that they're kind of like the founding member of like the Football League. I can't remember them. I think they must have got relegated like years and
I think it's been 100 odd years or so.
Yeah.
So let me play devil's advocate with the Everton theory. It's the worst nightmare of a fan to go down.
Yeah.
Believe me, I had a little bit of squeaky bum time myself as a Chelsea fan this season when things started to look a bit grim for us. Luckily, with that 3-1 win against Bournemouth today, we've saved ourselves from relegation, which isn't a sentence I thought I'd be saying. Probably wouldn't have launched a podcast if I'd have thought this season was going to go the way it did. But I do think if you say, let's say Everton go down, you then look at the teams that go down and I say, managerial-wise, who's best equipped to come back? Being in mind that, yes, Allardyce has brought teams up from the Championship, but we don't know whether he's going to be there or not. He's been paid, I think it was 500 grand for the 4 games or something like that to try and save them. I think Nottingham Forest would be in big trouble because of the recruitment, the players they've signed.
But then again, they would get quite a pretty penny for some of the ones they have signed. So financially, I think on top of the parachute payments, I think that they would just settle back into Championship life.
Yeah, but they exactly what you just said, there in terms of like the financial balance in the book side of things,
Yeah.
But then what are you left with? Who have you got to recruit? Yeah? Do you see what I mean? So what I'm saying is, I think that Everton, if they go down, being all that you said, I agree with all of it, I think they got the best chance of bouncing back. And I think that Leeds, for example, they're going to have bad trauma with what happened before because they went down and then they went down again. And then they spent like the best part of 2 decades without Premier League football for a club that, in the season before they went down, played Champions League football. We also look, right, clubs that went and haven't since come back. You know, I remember there was a time when, it was only 2 seasons they were in the league, but I remember there was a time when Blackpool were doing really well in the Premier League. Like Fulham at one point when they went, it took them a long time to come back. You got clubs that have won domestic cups. Swansea, Pompey, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say it, Birmingham for you lot. You got clubs that have won cups that have gone.
Still gives me PTSD, that one.
Yeah. Obafemi's last dance, wasn't it? It was him that scored, but
it was just when it's just when you see the replay after the goal goes in, somebody slaps Gordon Koscielny right on the back of the head and just gives him one of them as well for good measure. I mean, one that's, as you were just sort of reeling off them teams there. I mean, Oldham were one of the clubs that were in the founding of the Premier League. Oldham are now, I think, they're not even like, I don't know, where are they? They're not even National League now. I think
are they the ones that have fallen the lowest?
I think so.
I thought at one point it was Bradford, wasn't it?
Bradford
fell low.
Bradford went down. So I think the way, since they've all rejigged it, I think you sort of used to have the Vauxhall Conference. I think like Bradford went down to that because then that was then the jump into what was then Division 3 or whatever you want to call it now. But I think it can happen to any team. I think there's just a little bit more about Leeds. I think they've got some young players. I just think, again, not being out of the Championship for so long, it will just come naturally to them. For Everton, it might be a massive culture shock.
Environment, maybe, as well.
I think so. I mean, look, Everton fans are some of the best in the country. I mean, let's not have it, wrong.
No, but it's not about their fans. It's about the feeling of their fans towards the ownership. Yeah. I always openly say that I think Newcastle have the best fans in the country.
Yeah.
And that was a very toxic environment.
Yeah, we touched on it earlier, and I think we mentioned about like how the fans can be a massive thing, but they can only be a massive thing if they buy into what they're seeing, not just on the pitch, but off it. If the right people are running their club, they're going to get behind it. So if Everton continue with the current ownership, if the stadium's delayed anymore or whatever, that can start to turn pretty nasty pretty quick. And do you know what I mean? Like the way some fans are fickle nowadays, I'm not saying, that Everton fans are going to jump to Liverpool, but what I'm saying is any new generation you're going to want will probably want to support Liverpool more than Everton. And you've only got to look at Tranmere, who's like the poor relation. I mean, they're like down in the bottom half, in like, I think they're like League 2 or whatever. But I hope Everton get out of it.
So your, just to cap it back to that, your pick would be Everton would be the club that would be hurt the most by going down.
I think so, just because of how long they've been top flight. For their fans, it'll sting for a bit, but again, they're quite loyal fans. They'll get back behind the team.
We haven't mentioned West Ham, by the way. Which obviously there is a possibility with their fixtures. They could go down.
West Ham
We're saying this thing about the half-built stadium at Everton.
Yeah.
New stadium at West Ham. A stadium that there was a lot of discontent about, much like you said about the Emirates coming from Highbury, going from Upton Park to what is it called? The London Stadium.
London Stadium.
Yeah.
It's another toilet bowl.
So going from there was a lot of discontent, and what masked it, much like the fact that, you know, a lot of Man United fans get annoyed because people go, oh, well, you only became Glazers out when you got shit and whatever, and it's like, no, that's not the case. They were Glazers out, you know, from very early on, but Fergie's success marked it. The success that David Moyes was having at West Ham did mask that a little bit. That could all come to the surface once again if they were to go down. And we've seen other London clubs, as I mentioned, go down and not come back up. A notable one for me, one that went down, Charlton. Mm-hmm. Charlton, for me, were a club that obviously for a good couple of years were Premier League established. They went down. So West Ham, again, is one that... But then they've been there. They have been down. This is the main thing we're saying about Everton, is West Ham have had their time in the Championship over my lifetime. I'm 28 years old now. They've been down there 3 times. Whereas with Everton, that is a shock to the system. I think I'd agree with you, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think you just got to kind of look at it from that context. Yeah, I mean, for West Ham fans, it'd be devastating if they were to go down. But then you kind of have a look at it and go, oh, do you know what? It's kind of like how Burnley sort of trickled down eventually because they had the European football and that was like a distraction and they just don't have the squads to cope with it. Sorry. But yeah, I just think Everton for me would struggle just because of where they feel they should be. That only changes, I think, if that sort of higher management structure of the club, the board, whatever we want to call it nowadays, once they go and they get somebody in that is Everton or wants the best for Everton, then that's the only way they're going to get the fans behind them. Because what you could see, I know the Everton fans have already said and touched upon, I think they're loyal. If they're still watching the same shit in the Championship, you're going to have a massive stadium that's fucking empty.
Yeah, and then you're fucked.
And then that is when you will start then to see, like, and if they were to drop again, that's a worst case scenario, but just say you have 3 or 4 seasons of that, and it looks like Ewood Park, where there's just like I was literally no one there. No matter what they do, there's just nobody there.
Yeah.
Eventually, like
Wigan, their ground used to like Wigan's a rugby city, innit? You know what I mean?
It
like,
is.
They overachieved. They came up and they overachieved. Yeah. They won that cup. Roberto Martinez, the plaudits were singing his praises left, right, and centre. They went down, and much like that, as I say, like I see them go down, and then I'm looking at the stadium, and I'm like, what's that? That's like a third full, maybe? Or...
Yeah.
I don't think they would, though, by the way, ever.
No.
I don't think they would stay away.
I was just saying that was a very worst case scenario, but you could, stranger things have happened in football. Yeah. And as I say, like you look at Blackburn, they won the league in '95. Yeah.
That's a real one that I'd never mentioned in terms of going down.
That's the only time I've ever, as a fan, witnessed their ground full.
Yeah.
And even like a couple of seasons after. But I think even when they won promotion, I think Graham Souness was the manager, and I think they won promotion. And like, again, it was just like virtually empty. And I'm like, and again, I think that's more sort of like locational thing. It's kind of like the same what we're saying about Wigan, in that kind of Lancashire area, going up towards Manchester. A lot of people are just going to gravitate to those ones, or Liverpool or whatever. That's why Burnley struggle. Because they just don't have the fan base.
I know a lot of people from South London that gravitated towards Manchester.
I know. Well, the good thing is about them losing the other night, they didn't have far to travel from Brighton. It's about like an hour and a half to South Croydon. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's crazy. But part of me, as I say, I think if I got my like football head on and just sort of like looking at the way teams are playing and environments, and I just think Everton aren't going to get out of it this time. They flirted with it over the sort of last 25 years. 30 years, whatever. They've been there or thereabouts. This time, I think it might get them. And every now and again, it happens to a club. A club that you don't. Oh, they shouldn't go down, but it gets you.
There's no such thing as too good to go down.
No.
It happened to Newcastle. Exactly. It happened to Blackburn.
Exactly.
Mad thing is, historically big clubs, in terms of English football, I'm not saying Southampton massively are. If Leeds and Everton go, imagine Chelsea and won today, and Everton and Chelsea went. Lampard would have relegated 2 teams in one season.
Mate, that would have been like some achievement. I know he doesn't have many.
Don't. I fucking love Frank, mate. He's the bollocks. 3-1 win over Bournemouth. We're having it off, mate.
But if you look at Lampard's like last... Someone sent it to me on a WhatsApp group, but it was like his last 15, 16 games. I mean, it's horrific reading.
You're only as good as your last game, mate.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.